Hi guys, this is Greg Jones, and today I'm going to be bringing you a video entitled Pivot Points, a quick start to expert play. This is the first video of the ABC, S&G, Small Stakes Sit and Go Foundations videos that I'm going to be doing for DragtheBar. My handle on DragtheBar as well as Full Tilt and Poker Stars is ZeroSum79. Alright, so you're probably asking yourself, who is ZeroSum79? Who is this guy? And I'll be the first person to admit that I am not a extremely well-known, high-volume, high-stakes player. However, I am a blogger and author on poker topics. I'm a respected forum poster. And most importantly, I'm a proven coach at the low-limit sit-and-go level. $12 levels, $24, $12, and $6 levels. I've had a lot of students. I've had a lot of students who've had a lot of success going from either losing or break-even players to fairly high ROI players. They're becoming fairly feared at the tables, and so I've had really good results, and based on that, I'm going to be making some videos for DragtheBar. I'm a proponent of a very orthodox sit-and-go strategy style. It's very similar to the style advocated by Colin Moshman in the book Sit-and-Go Strategy. By 2+2. So, to be totally upfront, I think the Jason Ho saga that's been happening in the last week or two on the forums has got a lot of people spooked about things like, why are we paying attention to coaches? Why are we paying coaches so much money? How do we know when somebody's making a video that they're not full of it? So, to be very upfront, I want to just tell you that I'm not a high-stakes player. I play around the $24 level, and most of my results so far have been at the $12 level, although my ROIs are very good. I'm not a massive multi-tabler. I typically play about 12 tables. I'm not one of these 30-table grinder, sip and crisp style type grinders, but it's good because, basically what I'm doing is I'm focusing on what I believe that low-stakes players need to be able to use to succeed at sit-and-goes. We've got other great coaches on DragtheBar, including Rakes, who is a high-stakes player and also a massive multi-table player. So, and finally, what you'll see is that if you check me out on SharkScope, I'm not a huge volume player. I do have a day job. This is not my only job. I love my day job, actually, and my day job is really too cool to quit. So, I do this because I really love sit-and-goes. I really love playing poker, and it's taken me a couple years, but I've done what it takes to, I believe, demonstrate that I can win at a good rate. So, the title of the video is Pivot Points, and you're probably asking yourself, what the heck is a pivot point? Alright, a pivot point is a concept that I invented. It's proprietary. You're only going to hear about it on DragtheBar or on my blogs. And basically what a pivot point is it's a general range that works most of the time. Now, I'll be the first person to admit that that doesn't sound very exciting, but it's extremely exciting if you're trying to figure out how to beat sit-and-goes. Because what a pivot point does is that just by memorizing a few of these common situations where we know a good range that plays well against sort of general villains, what we're going to do is we're going to be able to go from a break-even player to a fairly highly winning player very quickly. So these are rules of thumb that basically you can use in common situations that are going to give you a very good result most of the time. And so, one thing that I've had a lot of people ask me is, are these pivot points going to basically stunt my growth? Are they going to be something that I can use at the low limits, but they don't really help me move up? They will not stunt your growth. They are based on mathematical fact from using Sit-and-Go Wizard to look at situations. In my opinion, pivots, for my students, pivots are the foundation for learning proper beginner and advanced sit-and-go play. And so the key is that pivots are not static. Pivots are called a pivot point for a reason, and we're going to get into why that is, but basically the more advanced that you get as a player, the more you're going to be adjusting these pivot points on your own. So even though it's a sort of a static range that works most of the time, as you become more of an advanced player, what you're going to be able to do is take the pivot point and start to adjust the pivot point correctly for, a situation that doesn't quite fit what the pivot point was generated for, and you're going to find that you can become a very advanced sit and go player very rapidly. All right. So when we're thinking about a sit and go hand, a poker hand, and no limit sit and goes, especially no limit hold'em sit and goes, since that's what I play, there's a lot of stuff to think about. All right, the first thing is what our hand is. The second thing is what are the effective stack sizes, meaning what is the stack size that we're actually risking. So if we've got 1,000 big blinds, but everybody else at the table's got 10 big blinds, then we're only risking 10 big blinds when we play against somebody. So we think of that effective stack size in terms of what the total number of big blinds is that we're going to be risking. And in a sit and go, we measure our stack not in chips, but in multiples of how many big blinds we have. So for example, if we have 1,000 chips and the big blind is equal to 100 chips, then we have a 10 big blind stack. Another very important thing in all forms of poker is our position at the table. And then once you're in the tournament, there's a lot of tournament-based dynamics that you also need to worry about. Things like, are we near the bubble? What are the relative stack sizes? Is there a micro stack or a huge stack? Is there any fold equity in our play? So, for example, if we have a short stack and we're shoving into a big stack, we may worry that our fold equity is really small. Or if we've got a micro stack somewhere near us on the bubble, then we may want to be a lot more risk averse because they're about to bust out. So, when it comes down to it, there's a lot of things to think about in sit and goes, and that makes the situations that we're going to face very, very complicated. The last and most difficult concept for most beginning players is what is our villain's hand range, and how do we adjust our hand range to respond to it? Now, this is the most challenging thing because this is the part that beginners don't really get. First of all, they don't really understand how they themselves should be playing in all situations. And so they don't really know how to adjust for what other people are doing to try to exploit them. And it turns out that bad players do much different things than good players to try to exploit you as a winning sit and go player. So as a beginner, it's very hard to just sort of pick out of thin air what is the villain's hand range and how am I going to adjust my hand range to compensate. All right. Now, most people learn by trial and error. And it turns out the problem with learning by trial and error with poker in general is it's a game of incomplete information. A lot of times we don't see somebody's hand. A lot of times we don't know what they're holding and they fold. Or even if we see a showdown, we have no idea if that's representative of what they would normally do with that type of hand. And another problem with poker is that poker results are often misleading. We can't just look at a situation in a poker tournament and say to ourselves, okay, well, that worked, so that's what we should do in the future. Because a lot of times poker will mislead us into believing that something that did work is in fact the right play when it's not, based on mathematics. And based on mathematics, a lot of times we'll see things that didn't work and say to ourselves, oh man, that was terrible, I'm not going to do that again, but in fact it was the correct play. So when we're learning about poker, because of these two problems, what we need to do is we need to find a reliable source of information that basically we know is correct. And so we look for things like forums on the internet or books, or we try to find people on video coaching sites who are respected and known to be winning players and also good at communicating that winning strategy. And when you go to the forums or you go to some of these places, the problem is a lot of the people communicate information poorly. And what you run into is you run into a situation that even though they're saying the right things, as a beginner or an intermediate player, because we don't have the proper foundation built for our sit and go game, we don't really understand exactly what they're saying. We just learn what they're saying, and then we try to create a strategy, a framework for ourselves.